The police raided my house because I changed my Wi-Fi password. Yeah, my Wi-Fi password. One minute I was sipping coffee, the next minute I had officers in my living room asking if I was interfering with community infrastructure. And if you think that sounds insane, wait until you hear what they discovered behind the HOA clubhouse door. Because that's the part that turned my entire quiet neighborhood upside down. My name is Paul King, and all I ever wanted, was a peaceful home with decent internet. That's it. I didn't move to Lakeside Grove because I love trimmed hedges or pastel-colored mailboxes. I moved here because it looked calm, predictable, safe. The kind of suburban neighborhood where the loudest sound is a lawnmower at 10 a.m. or a kid learning to ride a bike. But Lakeside Grove had something darker running under its perfect surface, something I didn't see until it was too late. And her name was Ella Thomas, the HOA president. Mid-50s, stiff smile, pearls always perfectly centered, and a binder that she weaponized like a police badge. People didn't talk back to Ella. They nodded, apologized, paid the fine, cut the grass half an inch shorter, and prayed she didn't show up again. I thought I could avoid her. Really, I did. I work from home as a systems engineer. I'm quiet. I mind my own business. I don't throw parties or leave junk in the yard. But somehow, even breathing on my porch felt like a violation of her imaginary HOA code. The first few weeks, I kept finding little yellow warnings taped to my door. One said my mailbox flag wasn't the approved shade of red. Another said my solar panels were unauthorized, which was hilarious because they were federally subsidized and perfectly legal. But whatever, I shrugged it off. It's an HOA, right? Annoying by design. Then my Wi-Fi started dropping. At first I blamed my internet provider, but when I dug into the router logs, I saw something that made my stomach twist. An unfamiliar device kept reconnecting under the name Lakeside HOA Main Cam Server. And it wasn't just connected. It was transferring hundreds of megabytes through my network every day. Someone was using my Wi-Fi. No, someone was feeding something through my Wi-Fi. I changed the password. Easy fix. Then for the fun of it, I renamed the network to No More Free Wi-Fi. By noon, there was a violent knock at the door. I opened it, and there she stood, Ella, holding her HOA binder like she was about to cite me for existing. Her face was tight red, furious. "Mr. King," she snapped, "what have you done to the community network?" I laughed because I thought it was a joke. The what? She jabbed a finger at my house. "The security cameras, the HOA cameras. They all went offline right after you tampered with your router." I stared at her. "Ella, what are you talking about? My internet is private. It is part of our community safety initiative," she barked, flipping through her binder. "Section 14B, Cooperative Infrastructure Maintenance." "That's irrigation pipes," I said, "not Wi-Fi." She took one step closer. "Reconnect the HOA network, or I will call the police and report a digital interference violation." I smirked. "You're going to call 911 because I changed my Wi-Fi password?" "Yes," she hissed. I should have closed the door. But no, I leaned against the frame and said, "Go ahead. I want to see the officer who writes that report." She dialed. Neighbors peeked out from behind blinds, phones recorded. She put on the show of her life. When the sirens echoed down our street, I realized she wasn't bluffing. Two officers stepped out of the SUV. The older one looked tired. The younger one looked like he'd seen this kind of HOA nonsense before. "Afternoon," the older officer said. "We received a call about Wi-Fi." Ella shoved her binder toward him. "He disabled our surveillance grid. He is tampering with community security." The officer turned to me, eyebrows raised. "Sir." "Come on in," I said. "Dangerous weapons in my office, my router." Inside, the older officer leaned over my computer. When he saw the connection logs, he let out a low whistle. "You've got an active connection attempt from something called Lakeside HOA Main Cam Server, and it's still trying to break in." The younger officer muttered, "That's not normal." We all looked at each other, and I saw the moment the officers realized this wasn't a silly neighbor dispute. Something was very wrong. They asked me to come with them to verify something at the HOA clubhouse. Outside, Ella was pacing like a rabid chihuahua. "Did you arrest him?" she demanded. "Ma'am," the older officer said, dead serious, "we're going to need to inspect the HOA systems." She tried to block the door. You cannot enter private HOA property without board approval. He calmly held up a warrant they'd gotten within the hour. We can now. Inside the clubhouse was spotless, too spotless. But behind a locked maintenance door was what looked like a miniature CIA surveillance room. Rows of monitors, Ethernet cables like spider webs, servers humming. And on those screens, my breath caught in my throat. Front yards, driveways, patios, even a kitchen interior. And on one of the screens, my backyard, my patio table. My laptop reflected clearly in the glass door. Ella stood frozen behind us, her fake confidence finally cracking. "It's for safety," she whispered. "No," Sergeant Reeves said. "This is unauthorized surveillance and illegal wiretapping." She started stuttering excuses, but there was no excuse good enough to cover a wall of stolen private footage. The officers seized everything. Neighbors gathered outside as they photographed servers and hauled equipment out. Janet from 3 houses down live-streamed the whole thing. People watched in real time as our perfect little neighborhood turned into a crime scene. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept thinking, she watched me. She watched all of us. For months. I stared at my dark laptop screen, wondering how much of my life had been collected, categorized, archived in her sick little system. I even started doubting myself. Maybe I should have left it alone. Maybe I escalated things. Maybe this was partly my fault. But the next morning, investigators revealed the real reason the cameras ran through my router. Ella routed everything through my network to hide her own IP. I wasn't just a victim. I was the shield she hid behind. That was the moment my guilt died. Over the next few days, evidence piled up. Ella had folders labeled by address: Patterson Residence, Garcia Residence, King Residence. Inside each were timestamps, video clips, even personal notes. She tracked when people left for work, when they turned lights off, what deliveries they got. She even wrote a note under my name: Paul King, suspicious. Stays inside too much. Possible hacker. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Neighbors were horrified. Janet found footage of her backyard hot tub. Mark discovered Ella had taken hedge-trimming photos straight from a secret camera. Everyone had their own violation, their own moment of realizing they were watched like inmates. It felt like our entire community had been undressed. When the first court date came, I took the stand. I told them what it felt like, how invasive, how humiliating, how violating it was to realize your sanctuary wasn't yours. The prosecutor played clips from the seized servers. The room went silent. Even the judge looked shaken. Ella kept insisting she was protecting the neighborhood, but when the prosecutor pulled up an email where she wrote, "If residents won't obey the rules, the cameras will make them," her entire defense crumbled. She was convicted, 18 months probation, community service, banned from serving on any HOA board for life. It should have been over. But Ella wasn't done. A month later, I got a summons. She was appealing, claiming the punishment was too harsh and that I defamed her publicly. At the hearing, her new lawyer tried to twist everything. He asked if I enjoyed media attention. He asked if I benefited from exaggerating the situation. He even tried to paint her as a misunderstood neighborhood guardian. But then the prosecutor displayed her private surveillance notes, detailed logs, personal comments, a borderline obsession disguised as community leadership. Ella's face drained of color. The judge denied her appeal and added a restraining order banning her from contacting any resident for 5 years. That was the day the empire she built out of paranoia, control, and hidden cameras finally collapsed. As deputies escorted her out, she glared at me, eyes full of something halfway between hatred and heartbreak. "I gave everything to this neighborhood," she shouted, "and this is how they repay me." I didn't yell back. I didn't gloat. I just looked at her and said quietly, "You didn't give. You took." She flinched like the words actually landed. Weeks passed. The HOA replaced its entire board. They rewrote the bylaws. We removed every hidden clause Ella had buried inside legal jargon. For the first time, the community could breathe. Then one evening I saw her again, just once. A black sedan pulled up near the clubhouse. Ella stepped out thinner than before, exhausted. She left a box on the steps. Keys, her HOA badge, and a handwritten note. I thought I was protecting people. Turns out I was only protecting my power. She got back in her car and drove away for good. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt relief. The kind of relief you only feel when the threat is gone, but the memory still lingers like a shadow you can't completely shake. And maybe that's the real truth about this whole insane situation. What it taught me, what it forced me to understand. Power doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers and smiles and calls itself safety. And sometimes the only way to expose it is by changing your Wi-Fi password.